right. What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 8 of Taking Stock. This is a hobby content collaboration between Sports Cards Live and the Sports Card Dad Network. It is Tuesday night, August the 1st, 2023. My name is Jeremy Lee, and that handsome fella right there is DPZ. What is going on, buddy? How you doing?
Not too bad, my friend. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you. I am finally rested after a very busy and hectic week at the National. I want to thank everybody who joined us last time when we took stock of hobby content. And a quick reminder and a gentle ask, if you are not yet subscribed to the Sports Cards Live or the Sports Card Dad YouTube channels, please take a moment and do so. And as always, in any live stream that I am involved in, your comments and questions are in play. So DPZ, why don't we start right now with a few comments? We have a few people in the room already. Sushi Boy Edits, what is going on? Let's go. Michael Ham, got to see you at the National. Always a pleasure seeing this guy. Hobby News Daily in the house. Perk, got to see you. What is going on? Another 364 weeks until the next show. Clay Phillips, good evening to you. Frank Costello. Jake at 90s B-Ball Cards. Frankie Gonzalez in the house all the way from Puerto Rico. Average Joe, what's going down? And Todd McDonald in the house. We got Orlando and we've got Jeff Hart. Orlando, I'm going to start off with this right now because I see a collector's dream. So Dennis, one of the things about the National this year over last year is the size. I mean, historically, it's been like 400,000 square feet. And I say historically, meaning back to like 2021, maybe 2019, it got a bit bigger. 2020, we didn't have it. 21, it got bigger. This time it was 600,000 square feet. So the show floor was so big, you could be walking it for 5 days and you could not run into a dozen people that you wanted to run into. So again, I've seen on content that a collector's dream was there. I don't know if I met him. I don't think I did. I think if I did, I would have been said, "Hey, I'm Orlando." I would have said, "Hey, I'm Jeremy. Nice to meet you." But that's one of the things about the National this year was there's a lot of people that I was hoping to see that I know were there, and I just didn't see them and didn't get to say hello. So that's kind of an awkward thing where in the past you would pretty much see anybody and everybody that you wanted to because it wasn't as big as it was this year. The thing was, it was a monstrous show floor. People were doing 18,000 steps during the day. So you've been watching content, listening to podcasts since the show ended. Now, for everybody to understand, I was there. Dennis was not at the National. So, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it with him tonight on Taking Stock because, I can answer some of his questions and he's going to have the take. His take is going to be what he saw from afar. Any opening thoughts from you?
Well, that's exactly it. I feel like I missed out. You talk about FOMO. I was kind of getting a little bit of that FOMO feeling. I wasn't there. I didn't get to go. I had other obligations that kept me from going. But, to me, my takeaway was it seemed like the hobby is in great shape. There's a how many people show up to an event like that, the engagement, all the content. There was a lot of content. I mean, it's hard to digest all of it, but from what I could see is there were a lot of people connecting with one another. The hobby community is alive and well. You have a lot of deals taking place. There was everything was represented from what I could see. And I feel based on my observations of the people I've been watching, it seems really collector folk. There's a big collector contingent to it. Not so, and I haven't been to any of these nationals, right? So I can't speak with any confidence, but from what I've observed is that from the content I've watched in the past years to this year's, it seems like more collector focused. Am I wrong in that?
I don't think so. It felt that way to me. The chatter I was hearing, the people I was talking to, the other collectors, the vendors I talked to, like everybody was happy with the show as far as the transactions went, the volume, the interactions. the show had a couple of issues, but these were things that were out of anybody's control. Mike Petty says here, I saw no air conditioning. Well, there was air conditioning, but it was 99 degrees outside and there were 50,000 people in the room. I'm estimating. So it's going to be tough for any air conditioning to sustain that. And it got a lot better on the Friday, Saturday, but Wednesday, Thursday were absolutely brutal from just a comfort level perspective. So, that's something to consider. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't that bad. Now, it wasn't obviously ideal, but your collector comment, yeah, I mean, tons of kids in the room, tons. Like, it was crazy how many kids there were. I remember in the old days of card shows, like in the early 90s, you would go to a card show and the people looking at the showcases were 3 deep. Like, you had to, I'm lucky I'm tall. I can look over people and see, but you had to look through cracks to see showcases. And then, you had the 2010s come around and it's not so hard. Now here we are. And it was like that again, almost from the moment it opened until the end of Saturday. Sunday people are packing up by 11 a.m., but it was to the point where you couldn't, like, if you saw a booth that had nobody at it, you walked over to it because there are some cards you can easily see, some showcases that you could easily browse. Like, it was busy. It was busy. And I didn't talk to any dealer that wasn't happy with the show. That one dealer told before the show even opened to the VIPs on the Wednesday, one dealer told me he'd already had his best national ever. I mean, that was pretty crazy to hear right there. Here, Bargain Box Hunter says too many corporate booths and not enough vendors, changing for the worst. And the only thing I would say to that is it really depends on your perspective. That's a glass half empty kind of outlook. Not to criticize it, but the way I think of it is, you had to walk a little bit more. Yeah, there were a lot of corporate booths this time, but there weren't any fewer vendors. That's the important thing to understand. There were still more vendors than ever before, and there were also more corporates. But I don't know if that means it's changing for the worse. If you don't want the corporate, like, don't go to them. You don't have to go to that area. You can avoid it and just go to the card show tables if you want. And there were plenty. So I don't think. I mean, that to me is just kind of like a negative Nancy kind of comment.
Jeremy, can I circle back to a comment you just made? And some comments we're seeing in the text right here. What does it mean? Okay, there's a lot of young kids there. Obviously, that means that the hobby has youth, which would suggest there's going to be longevity there, right? But what's going to be different this time? You said the early 90s, and there was that lull, and then it's back again. You got young kids. What's going to keep it sustained, and where we don't get that big dip where everybody exits out, the junk wax era, everybody got tired, they moved on? How do you combat that? I mean, kids are going to get older. They're going to discover girls, all the things that happened to many folks that collected in the mid to late 80s, early 90s, and then moved on. How does that change this time around?
That's that's a really good question. I don't have the answer, but what I will say is that, okay, there's two things. First of all, it might be unavoidable. I mean, everything is cyclical. So we're going to see ups and downs, and maybe we're going to go now, maybe the last couple of years were a bit of an upswing towards more involvement, more people coming into the hobby. Sure, prices are down from 2 years ago, but participation is up. Involvement is up. I believe transactional volume is up right now over what it was 2 years ago. So what do we have to do to avoid that? There's one thing I think that is almost going to be a shield against that, and that is simply the proliferation of social media and content. I think content has something to do with, and not what by content, I mean everybody on Instagram, everybody on Twitter, and of course, I say everybody loosely. There are a lot of people that don't do any social media in the hobby. So let me rephrase: all the people on Instagram, all the people on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, these platforms are giving the hobby more exposure, and that in itself might help mitigate the risk that we go into another dip like we saw in the second half of the 90s that really lasted for quite some time until it picked up again, at least, for my perception, about 10 or 15 years ago. So and then especially picked up a few years ago. So
Well,
and then also, Dennis, also is the Fanatics element. I mean, Fanatics is this marketing machine that we haven't seen what they're going to do yet. We've seen glimpses, but we haven't seen what they're going to do totally for this hobby, for sports cards and for sports cards. So time will tell. But I think that we have less risk of a complete dip to where, you know, we lose 80% of participants. I think you're always going to have attrition. You're always going to have people leaving, and you're always going to have people coming, but hopefully more coming than leaving. And we have a net positive because, I mean, I think we just all want it to be, we want more and more. Listen, you also hear people say, why do we want the hobby to grow? Well, I don't know. Growth is natural. Growth is good. Evolution is good. We're not, I mean, we have sliced bread and wheels and everything else that comes along with it now, since those revolutionary inventions. So, yeah. What do you think?
I mean, that was a great point. I mean, I just remember 2021, maybe 2021, more or less 2020. You heard a lot. The narrative was, you know, Gary Vee's talking about all these, you know, more very influential people, in whether they be actors, athletes. They're going to start getting into cards, and it's going to turn it into something, you know, it's going to, you know, you have no idea the kind of people who are buying into this now. Obviously that was a while back, and you wonder, maybe that wasn't what was going to make it really transform the hobby and give it the stability that it really needs. It's going to be this youth movement that, because you think about all the young people are just, they're growing up with Twitter, TikTok, all that stuff. They're not our age where we're like, we had to, you know, acclimate to it. This is all they know. So that'll obviously change things, but there's a lot of great comments in here. There's a comment back there. I see something about how the show is going to be smaller in the future. Some lottery meeting.
What time? What time? Oh, right here. Yeah, Colin Murray at the lottery meeting. We were told corporate will be smaller, more of a dealer show. Well, I think the reason for that is because the Cleveland venue next year, I don't think it can hold. I don't think it's 600,000 square feet like the Stevens Center in Chicago. I was asking that question I asked Al Dorso, who is the head of the committee. He's not the person. He's the head of the board of the National. Had dinner beside him on, I think it was Friday night, and he said, "Yeah, Cleveland's smaller, so there's going to be fewer." I think I don't want to quote, but fewer something. Whether he said corporate or vendors, I don't remember. But it looks like Colin is saying corporate will be smaller. So I mean, that's going to make some people very happy for sure that's the case. But it's interesting to note, just because the Chicago show this year was so big and had, you know, broke attendance records. This is now the biggest card show of all time in the world. It's not going to break the record again next year because the facility simply can't do it. It just is not big enough. And I've been to the Cleveland National 3 times, and I love. I'll tell you. If anyone watching, if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been there, this is good news. The room in Cleveland, the facility, is in my opinion, easily the best venue for the National. It's got super high ceilings, lots of natural light coming in. It's just it's not close to the hotels. You're not going to walk across the street to Gibson's or Morton's or the Capitol Grill or your hotel. So take that into account. But the building itself is, I believe, the best one in the system.
Okay.
JG, recent comment. All I heard was the content creators meeting up and congratulating each other on saving the hobby and how they are going to 10x the hobby. Well, if that's all you heard, you're missing out on some great content, JG. There's a lot more to it than just that, for sure. Jake says Brett suggested Indianapolis. He said there's plenty of space plus hotel. Yeah, so plenty of space plus hotels is not all it takes. There's so much you need. First of all, you need to be able to book 2 years in advance. The National does. And a lot of venues around the country won't allow for that. So there is a lot going on. It's not as simple as just pick a city. Why isn't it there? It just is not that simple. And I'm sure we'll get more information on that as the new management of the show, starts to really get their feet dirty and getting into the swing of things for next year. Because while the National, like the board of directors, is made up of dealers and vendors who've been doing this for a long time, who care about the hobby, they then hire the management, like it's a third-party vendor to come in, and that's what has changed going into next year, is the management of the show. But yeah, be happy to go to Indianapolis. I mean, we'll be in Cleveland next year, and then I guess it's up in the air for the year after. Bargain Hunter, they installed air conditioning on Friday night. That's a fact. One guy fell and cracked his head. How is that good for the hobby? Well, it's not good for the hobby. It's not bad for the hobby either, though. It's bad for that one person, unfortunately. I hope they are okay for sure. Sebastian says, I don't know for you, but it looks like all internet were at the show except me. I'm not sure what all internet means. Michael Ham says, so I should invest in a food truck outside the Cleveland National. That's not a bad idea. I'm sure there will be some people who are there with one already. Brian says Anaheim. Yeah, so there was a show in Anaheim way back, and the record was just broken. And but we have the Burbank show now that's in Anaheim, and it's coming up at the end of this month, beginning of next month. So lots of sort of interesting discussion around, is the National going to do Anaheim ever again, or is the Burbank show and their promoters taking that over? And then, of course, the whole Fanatics events thing. I heard a rumor that Fanatics was acquiring the National. I heard someone who I don't think would really know said that, but I've also heard from someone that I think does know say that that's not happening. So pretty interesting there. Mookie says, Jeremy, talk about your clientele this week. Did they spend more or less? Did they seem older or younger? I didn't have any clientele, Mookie. I was not set up as a vendor. I was there on my own, walking the floor. I was there, representing tag grading. I spent about 10% of my time at the tag grading booth, but that was about it. I was really walking the floor, talking to people, enjoying myself as I would at really any card show that I'm not set up at as a vendor. Bradley would love the National to be in Vegas. Lapper, good to have you. Orlando says old collectors don't want to travel to Florida. Yeah, I've seen. I was listening to earlier today. I listened to the podcast, Sports Card Nonsense. Mike Gio and Jesse, and they were saying that there's a lot of these older vendors that are grandfathered in that do no business at the show. Like they literally don't do any business, or that at least that they saw. And they come and have a good time and show their stuff. And yeah, I mean, one of my rules for myself as a card show attendee is, if you have a showcase with stacks of cards and top loaders with elastics around them in your showcase, I walk right on by. It just looks like a mess, unorganized, dusty. And I don't know how those vendors did, but I can't imagine that they did well, because there's so many vendors who are properly set up and organized with a nice display. So I wonder. Bargain Boxer says they reduced vendors for Cleveland, more corporate booths. All right, that's the decision that has been made. If Bargain Boxer is speaking from an informed perspective, which I just don't know. I don't know who Bargain Boxer is. Bob's Big Boy says that Cleveland is 2 times the Stevens Center in exhibition space, 1.2 million square feet to 560 for entire Stevens first floor. Interesting. That's not what I heard, but I don't know. Maybe I can't speak to that, Bob's Big Boy. But talking to the management of the National, that's not the understanding that I had. But I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. Mike Petty says last show in Anaheim, 1991. Yeah, you got a beautiful 71 Clemente. Very nice. Very nice. All right. Well, anything you'd like to ask Dennis, or any content you've seen that has made you ask questions or wonder what's going on? Anything at all?
Yeah, I was curious, and we talked about this pre-show. I was curious from my perspective, not being there, and there was a comment earlier in there said it seemed like everybody was at the National except for me, based on what you're seeing on Instagram and YouTube. And I feel your sentiment there. I felt like I was the only one that wasn't there. Very excited to go next year, but yeah, I had that feeling. One of the things I was curious about was, for those of you that were there, and you, Jeremy, what did you? When you're talking to dealers, what did you notice? Was there more modern cards moving? Was there more, the 90s? Was it more vintage? Is there a certain segment like hockey, baseball, basketball, football? What was really popular What was moving? Like, what was the talk of the hobby or of the convention when you were there, if there was anything at all?
Yeah, well, from the shoes that I was walking in, what I would say was, and the people I talked to, there was a lot of action on autographed vintage cards, vintage baseball, basketball mostly. I didn't hear anyone talking about football. Don't think I heard anyone talking about baseball. About hockey. But that's kind of what I was hearing. But again, I kind of was walking in the circles with some of these vintage people who fellow collectors who like that stuff. Not what I personally was looking for or looking at, but to the other part of your question, everything was represented. And I think everything was moving because I didn't talk to it. The dealers that have the stuff that doesn't sell, I didn't stop and talk to them. I didn't that's not where I spent my time. The dealers I did talk to that had, nicely presented vintage cards. I mean, when I could talk to them, they were busy. They were selling. Modern was selling. 90s, I know 90s was selling because I saw people showing me what they were buying. So, baseball still dominates the room. I'm not saying it's the majority, but it certainly is the sport that has the most cards. Tons of that. Tons of baseball, basketball, football. My fellow hockey collectors, I heard some say, there's more hockey here than they were expecting, but I heard others say there's very little hockey here. And I was saying, you know what? It's there. It gets drowned out amongst everything else. But if you look for it, you will find it. And if you took it all and put it all together, you'd have a pretty darn nice selection of hockey. And then, then you've got everything else. You got F1, you got wrestling, you've got tennis cards. I wasn't looking for that, so I saw one table all F1, saw wrestling cards, maybe saw a couple tennis cards, not a lot. Saw one showcase, it was all vintage Disney cards. I thought that was pretty cool, like vintage Disney, like maybe from the 60s at them as the most recent. So lots of stuff there. Okay, Bargain Boxer has something I'm not going to agree with. Says this was not a buying show. I will disagree. That's just wrong. He says cards were 100 to 200% of comps. I mean, if it's not a buying show, then how did so many people have their best show? And like it just doesn't make sense. I guess it depends what you're looking at. I really so. But he has to please his sponsors. Bargain Boxer. This show has no sponsors. You okay.
I'm on the show, Bargain Boxers. We have no sponsors yet. I'm still unsigned, so
no, that's fine. Some people just like to make comments like that. But okay, Mookie Chilson says, "What's the big takeaway for Tag coming out of Chicago? Went really well for Tag, exceeded expectations, sold out our capacity, and from what I was told, many people who came and saw what we were doing wanted to ask if they could invest in the company. I don't know if there's a better validation than that when people and some names that you've all probably heard as well." Wanted to invest. So I thought that was pretty cool. Ladies Man says, not for all, but for some, I think location to the average cost of travel will dictate where you can hold this. The only thing, honestly, and I know from talking to the highest ups at the National, the only thing that dictates where it is what convention centers in what cities can accommodate this for various reasons, not just size. It has to do with size. It has to do with parking. It has to do with accommodations. But it also has to do with when it can be scheduled, when there's room, and a few other things that I don't remember, but that I know are tougher logistically for this group and this event to be anywhere. It's but we'll get that information soon enough, I am sure. Wes, I like this. West Texas says, I like disorganized displays, usually better deals than the pristine ones. Yeah, I think there's probably truth to that. For me though, I don't want to have to look through I don't like dusty old top loaders. I don't know. I don't want to be getting into those myself. Jake says there was a really good variety this year, especially in comparison to prior years. I've heard that too, that the overall assortment was really, really strong. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Hobby News Daily says, bargain. Yes, the casino company owns the license to future cards. People chase a now card. I'm not sure what that's getting at. Grotman Card says, I have no data to back this up, but it felt like there was less vintage than I've ever seen at a national, although it was still the most popular item there. I mean, I don't know. The regular vintage vendors that are always there, most of them that I know from, this was my 15th national, something like that. Most of them were there. The few that died over the past couple of years were not there, but there were several there, especially in the old room and the old room near the entrance. You walk in the main entrance and you look ahead of yourself. There's that whole section is always very vintage heavy. And it was again this time. Stuke says Clemente was a big seller. West Texas says 90s inserts were hot at the show. Collector's Dream says many vintage dealers I spoke to said it was their best show ever. Yeah, so I mean, someone said earlier it wasn't a buying show. That person just, I don't know, probably just missed out or something. Hobby Champ says, did you get to experience any of the trade nights? The only trade night I went to was the Wolfpack trade night. And I could only stay for the first half hour. I had 3 events. I had 6 events that night. I got to 3 of them. And so I was there for the first half hour. And I must say that group put on what turned into being, and I saw some content after, it was a very well laid out and prepared and organized trade night. But Dennis, I saw that it kind of turned into a bit of like a party, not like a crazy shaker, but like a fun, not just a trade night with some fun, with additional fun besides just trading, I guess. And I think that'll become an annual event. This Facebook user says the hockey is there. You just got to work for it. You got to look for it. Definitely. Ladies Man says soccer was running hot there. I think that's good to hear. Not something I collect or look at, so I wouldn't have been able to comment. Mookie says it seemed like last year was a coming out party for Whatnot. Was there any such storyline for any brand this year? Well, I don't know if it was a coming out party, Dennis and Mookie, but what I noticed, because his booth was close to where I was hanging out a bit, was Evan Mathis's booth for his company Card Seer, Card SEER. He had a huge booth with a bunch of tables set up with laptops on them and like comfortable chairs. And I'm not exactly sure what Card Seer is. I read all the roll-up banners they had, and I couldn't quite understand what they were, what the business is. But I don't know if it was a coming out party, but they had a monstrous booth, and it seemed to be busy at times. So maybe that was, maybe not. I'm just not sure. Did you hear anything, Dennis, about any companies that really had a great showing there?
No, I mean, you hear about the big ones, but no, I didn't. It was more of a focus. It wasn't so much in corporate for me. It was the experience. Again, what I take away from most of this is the community aspect. Seeing everybody meeting up, all the pictures everybody's taking. I mean, Spinatron sounds like he basically took a photo with every collector that was there, and it was nonstop. That was exciting and cool to see. That's the kind of stuff that I gravitate towards, because I think it reminds me that this hobby there's a big community out there. It's very alive and well, and that's the aspect of it that I feel like I missed out on. But no, I haven't heard anything about any particular sponsor and their setup. It is interesting that Evan Mathis was there, because all that stuff that went on, I felt like he was basically giving himself an awareness tour before launching his company with all that trimming stuff. But hey, it made for good content. Can't complain.
Yeah. I asked him at one point, I said, hey, has anyone come up to you about your trimming video? And he sloughed it off. He said, and by the way, Evan's a very nice guy. Like he's a very friendly person, despite what you might think about him for his trimming and his video. And that is, I mean, listen, I have my opinion on that, but he's just a nice person, was my takeaway from talking to him. But with that said, I said, did anyone come up to you? Like was anyone mad at you? He said, nah. He goes, you know what? He said that video only had 4,000 views. Hardly anyone saw it. People don't even care. Is kind of what he said. And I just said, okay, and walked on my way I didn't want to get into it with him, but I thought that was interesting. Hobby News Daily. I think this is Ziggy. Must be Ziggy. Says, I want better, not bigger hobby. Listen, I can't argue with that. And I think we might get both. We might get both. Stuke says he saw an unopened 30s hockey bag. I didn't see that. So I did not see that. Ziggy, I don't know when we will know the winner of 2025. I think I heard October, which seems a little bit long, but I have no idea why. Interesting. Michael Ham says Tag had the best giveaway. That's cool to hear, Michael. Appreciate that. Bargain Boxer says Chicago wins 2025. I hope so myself. That's where I'd like to see it there. The professor says influencers who were at the National. He says the Nationals. It's not Nationals. It's not plural. It's an event. It's a card show. It's the National. Having been posting, it is not a buyer show. There was no or very little Bowman baseball. They suggest going to local card show to buy is better. And just keep in mind, everybody, whether it's an influencer or anybody else, that's only one person's experience at the show. And I can only speak to my experience and the people I spoke to as well. All right. James likes the messy tables as well. M. Monty, is there any truth to the rumor that Dennis didn't attend the National because he spent all of his budget prior to the show? I was told he took advantage of a new hobbyist and scored a really big card. And I kind of know the background on this, Dennis. Can you speak to that, please?
No, I definitely didn't take advantage of anybody. It was a very fair deal and a very experienced hobbyist that Jeremy actually knows really well. And he came to me via Jeremy from reference. But no, it wasn't why I wasn't able to go. Although I probably, after picking up that card, I wouldn't have been able to buy anything. But no, I might have brought some stuff to sell maybe. But even so, I had a family obligation that I had to attend to, and so it just didn't work out this year. But no, definitely scored a big card. But I have never taken advantage of anybody. Honestly, on eBay, I think
He's kidding. I mean, he's the one.
Oh,
he's the one you bought it from. He's the one you bought it from.
Okay.
West Texas. West Texas says, Jeremy, not card related, but digging that Vectrex behind you. That is an original Vectrex right there, everybody. Thanks for noticing, West Texas. That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome for sure. Mr. Davey says, best National ever. So happy with what I picked up. That's great. Chad Shipper, great seeing you too. Thank you for the gift. I'm gonna share it when I do an episode and I show my pickups, which I got to tell you, I didn't pick up. I only bought 4 cards. 2 were cash and 2 are cash trade, but I came home with more than just 4 cards, which I will definitely show another time. Michael Ham says the Wolfpack was a party with a DJ. Definitely. My buddy Sam, good to see you, bud. John says, I enjoy hearing Yager push my Nathan McKinnon cards. Yes. And Todd McDonald says, did you get a chance to chat more with Yager after the camera was turned off? So if you notice in my Yager interview, which is 5 minutes and 20 seconds, there's a cut. There's one cut in that video, and I had to cut it out. I had to cut something out because I totally messed up, and I said something that completely wasn't true. I didn't know. I had no forewarning that I was going to interview Yager. I was being interviewed on the Dave and Adams white couch where they were doing content all week long. And as we're wrapping up, Yager walks by and he's right in front of me. And they're like, hey, Jeremy, thanks for taking the time. I'm like, Yager, legend. I do that. And then, everyone looks and he laughs and his buddies laugh. And then they're like, all right, well, thanks again, Jeremy, for doing this. Appreciate your time. I'm like, guys, I got to go. And I bolted off their couch and I kind of got caught up to Yager. And I politely said, hey, I've, been following you for a while. Do you mind if we have a quick conversation? I record it. He's like, yeah, no problem. So we do this little short 5 minute, and I guess I cut out 20 seconds, but I wasn't expecting it. I didn't have any questions in my mind. And at one point I say to him, and this is completely wrong, it's almost the opposite of the truth. I go, so Yarmer, you spent your whole career with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And right away I'm like, no, you didn't. You were there for he played for 9 teams. So I didn't have a brain fart. And he goes, no, I go, you're right. There was even the traveling Yagers. I mean, he played for my team. He played for the Calgary Flames. So just a brain fart. But so I said that. And then he goes, oh, it's okay. I go, oh, that was my mistake. He goes, everybody makes mistakes. So we continued. And then I cut back into the interview. After we're done, we chatted for a few more minutes. And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, you effed up. But he said the word. He goes, yeah, you effed up. I go, I know, man. I go, I don't know. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, we did chat a bit more after that, Todd. Ziggy says, Mike and Jesse say a lot of things and don't cash the checks they write. I'm sure dealers have their opinions of flashy geo breaks attacking the dealers. I don't know what that's all about. Can't really speak to that. Thank you, Hobby Champs. CC says, hypothetical question. If you could only pick one show to attend, Expo or National, oh, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to say National. Like, Expo is my favorite, but National, there's just so many more people. And I love seeing the people. It's all of, like, Dennis, you walk around the show. I talked to a couple people who said that, like, they didn't even look at cards. They walked around and just looked at the people watching and talking to people, and they had a great experience. And 2 people told me that. And I looked at cards, but I also, you couldn't walk 10 steps without someone saying hello or me seeing someone to say hello to. And that really made every day so cool. So much fun. The Mangini, yeah, it was nice to meet you, John Mangini. I am taller in person. You're handsomer in person, Mr. Mangini. So good to see you. Hobby Champ says Evan Mathis should be on Sports Cards Live. Hey, you never know. Mookie Chilson, finish this sentence. The 2023 National marked the year that the hobby. That's a tough one, Mookie. Great question. Dennis, I guess you're not really in a position to answer that. You weren't there, but nope. Gosh, Mookie, I'm going to have to think about that and come back to it. I apologize. Candid Yager was refreshing. He was definitely very, very candid. Okay, Michael Ham says, I videoed the machine at Cardseer. Again, that's Evan Mathis's company. It looks like a scanning machine of slabs. The matching was crazy. It will be in my next video. Check out Michael Ham's YouTube channel, everybody, and check that out. Check out what we're talking about right there. JG says, everyone talks about 10xing the hobby. Do they realize card prices won't 10x in price? I don't think it's about the pricing, JG. I think it's about the participation, the participants. I think that's what it is. I've heard Michael Rubin say that, most sports fans are candidates for being collectors.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean prices have to go up. It just means more volume. And now you think the more demand, the higher the prices might go. And that's your typical supply demand curve. But I think they might satisfy that just with more supply as well to meet that demand. So
I think that's always the concern you worry about. You worry about the hobby getting so big, but then you worry about the capitalistic nature of all these businesses. They're going to want to capitalize on that and profit from it. So I'm just looking for a nice, healthy stability, where the collector and the hobbyist are enjoying it in a real authentic way, where, the print runs I almost feel like, can we have the same print runs and scarcity that we had from 2095 to 2010 or whatever, or 2003 or 2004, whatever that time frame was, where the print runs were, more subdued, and still have the same amount of participation. Although I know that's probably never going to happen because of kind of, society we live in. But I like sustainability. I don't like a big up and a down. I just feel like that's not healthy for long term. And so hopefully we can, something like that would actually happen. But yeah, Cards age, hopefully. Yeah, probably not.
Rodman PC says, this was definitely one of the best shows in the past 6 years. I personally love Chicago, but I just wish the convention center was closer to downtown. Yeah, I think in the probably 6-7 times I've been to the Chicago National, I've been downtown maybe 2 of them. And it just seems that there's if you're there with your family, and listen, do what you want to do. But for me, I don't have personally any interest to leave the show area where all the show action is. I'm personally going there for the cards and the card people and the hobby. So, and there's enough to do. And with all the extracurricular activities that now go on with all the trade nights, there's plenty to do. Like, you really don't have to be, you can decide, hey, that was a long day. I'm sore. My body's sore. I'm tired. I want to get some sleep. There's a lot of merit to that. But if you don't want to keep on socializing and being in that card environment, there's lots of places, I think, to do that right around there. Rodman goes on to say there was definitely more buying power on the floor. I 3x'd my sales from last year. So, hey, we've already 3x'd the hobby, only 7 more to go. And Fanatics hasn't really even taken over yet. So, Professor, enjoyed my Instagram interview with Yager. Thank you Professor also says, one influencer said Tag had the best giveaway of all the grading companies at the National. Cool. That's cool to hear. Another Rodman comment says, is it too much to ask for the NSCC organizers to build an app and categorize each booth table? It's easy to get lost and sometimes almost impossible to find stuff. I agree with that. GM10 did a good job having their own branded maps, not only in the convention center, but at the hotels around it too. They had an app with a map. Maybe enough people didn't know about that, but big kudos to Billman, the GM10 team, for doing that. Jimmy says, question for me, if AI programming was to grade the same card 5 times, it would always receive the same grade. Yes. Well, listen, I can't speak for AI grading by anybody else, but at Tag grading, the answer is yes. You can submit the card 100 times and you will, as long as nothing changed about the card, you will get the same grade every single time. I think our margin of error is within 8/1000ths of a grade. So that's that's pretty tight in my opinion. Dennis,
let me I get a question. It's a sort of off topic, but I wonder, like Super Bowl Sunday, could you, I don't know, maybe this is doesn't sound quite right, but have like a radio row of hobby content creators at the National, set up, branded, all of that stuff, where you're sitting there with headphones on, doing live shows on location at the National, talking to people. I know you got camera crews walking around and chasing people like Jeff Wilson, and other people are just kind of carrying their Instagram lives around and going, hey, but like a literal attempt, like the National literally set up a section where hobby influencers, I guess it came out of my mouth, just content creators could set up, like your sports card nonsense. You got your, the sports card investor. You got Jeremy Lee, Sports Card Live, maybe taking stock. Hobby with Cage, all these different shows would be sitting there live and doing their shows live, kind of like what the Mint Collective was kind of doing, but make it more of like a very purposed thing, right? Do you think that would work? Is there no need for it?
I don't think there's a need, because let's face it, I think that I was listening to sports card nonsense earlier today, and those guys, they did their content, but they were walking the floor, and I even heard Mike Gio say that next year he's hoping that he can walk the floor more than he did even this year. So that's just one content creator, but I would not want to be tethered to a content section. I think I want to be in the middle of everything. If I'm going to be set up, I want showcases, and I want to be, buying and selling and trading with other collectors in the hobby. But there in the past, I forget who it was this year, but I know last year the collectible booth, and the year before, I think, and also the Mint Collective, the collectible booth had a content studio where that was glass in, you can go in there and it was open to any content creator that wanted to go record a podcast, bring a guest, that kind of thing. I forget who did it this year. I didn't go and do one, but so you have that opportunity. I don't know if that's necessary myself, but maybe some other way to get them all together, or some panel discussions on the main stage. I know that the Hobby Hotline crew and the Hobby News Daily crew, hobbynewsdaily.com, those guys both had time on the main stage to talk hobby with, it's a small audience that sits on the chairs out there, a very small audience considering how big this place is and how many people are there. But I think, mostly people are there to walk and talk. So Joe Perot says Jagger was an interesting dude. I don't think I'd want to get in a bar fight with him. Nope, definitely not. Perk says, I'd like for Atlanta to get picked. Switch it up. Advice for best closest hotels to the convention center in Atlanta. Have none. Have no advice for that, Perk. Cards AH says the 2023 National marked the year that the hobby had a market correction to the norm. That's a good one. And the other thing I heard a lot of was that while some vendors had really high prices, they were old prices, and they would negotiate nicely down to more current valuations. So I didn't personally I mean, yes, I saw cards that I didn't want to buy because they were too expensive, but that's fine. I mean, I don't get all bent out of shape about it. I just go on to find the cards that I can buy from people. I didn't buy a lot of cards, but various reasons for that. But people I talked to were getting cards, and people I talked to were getting cards at prices that they were quite happy with. And again, I mean, so many people told me that they had their best show ever. So, I don't know if it was a buyer show. I think it was a normal show. I think it was a normal show, like going back to the normal as in leading up to the pandemic. Vintage is very glad the convention center isn't downtown. No desire to go downtown. What's up, Jay-Z? Good to see you. Have you asked Brian Gray why Leaf had a huge space that was pretty much empty the entire time? It was very odd. I did not ask him. No, I did not ask him. And I don't know why, but I agree they had a very big space that a lot of it just seemed to be wasted. They could have probably fit in another block of tables there and would have had the same impact, I would think. James says, I think that is what Fanatics Events is going to target, have shows at big sporting events, Super Bowl, All-Star games, draft nights, etc. Yeah, could be for sure. John says they need to push more star players opening cardboard. It's pretty much that simple. All right, we're close to the bottom here. Another comment by the professor says content creators have suggested to extend Saturday hours and not to have a Sunday show day. I don't know about extending it. People get hungry. It closes at 6. It's open from 10 to 6, 9:30 to 6. That's a long day for the vendors. I think you're going to get pushback from vendors if you extend that day. They don't want to stay much later. And if you think about it, the trade nights extend it, in a natural way anyway, and then everybody becomes a vendor. So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they get rid of Sunday either. Michael Ham says, I went live from the floor. Internet connection was good, and I was able to go live from the floor. So that was nice. That's awesome, Michael, for sure. Decoy cards. Many people go for many reasons. I think following Comic-Con and having a panel area would be smart. Bring out product sneak peeks, product designers, athletes, eras. Yeah, like that's what they do at the Comic-Cons. They have all these breakout rooms. That's what the Mint Collective was trying to do. And there's something, I think there's definitely something to that. Kind of have these breakout sessions. And he's right. People say many people go for many reasons. I agree. People aren't just going to look at cards. Some people are going to take in content, and I do agree with that. Look at McDavid opening a pack of hockey cards. No idea why we do not see more of this stuff. Fair enough. The professor must watch a lot of content creators because he's letting us know what the content creators are saying. So good to have him in here to keep us kind of centered around this. As several content creators mentioned that there were more Type 1 photos and showcases at the National this year. There was one guy named Ryan who's from Auction Report, and his booth was only Type 1 photos, and I think it was 95% Michael Jordan's, and it was awesome, just awesome. Stukes here, Dennis says, many dealers remember the bad 1999 Atlanta National. It appeared to be more dealers than customers. That was 24 years ago. Times have changed, but memories are still there. And Travis Mater says, it was a pleasure meeting you at the show. You're a lot taller than I expected. Thank you, Travis. Business for Tag was exceeded our expectations. Bobby Baseball, first time in a few years that most dealers were willing to discuss comps when buyers were looking at their key cards. So again, back to that whole thing, 2023 National might be remembered for the time when everybody just kind of got real again after the pandemic. Because if you go, it was only 2021, 2022, and that's it. There's only those two shows that we've had since the pandemic until this one, where dealers were still higher on prices than people wanted them to be.
So why do you think that? Why do you think that? Sorry, why do you think that changed?
I think because people don't want to sit on inventory. I think because it's almost like when you go through a period of mourning, especially if you're into a card for more than it's worth now. Okay, I'm into it for 10 grand, I'm into it for 1,000, whatever, and now it's worth 30 to 50% of what I paid. So now I've had those two other shows of still having that card, and I'm almost, and I'm not me, but I'm speaking for these people, and I'm purely speculating, but it's like I've mourned that money. I've mourned the loss in the value of those cards. So now I'm like, okay, I'm now ready to move it. Maybe that's what some of them are thinking. And it's like, hey, if I want to move the card, I better take what I can get and then redeploy those funds into something else. And maybe I can buy for my PC or flip and make more money instead of sitting on something that might be depreciating. The other thing is that some areas of the hobby have bounced back. One in particular, Michael Jordan cards are doing very well right now. Hot as heck. Maybe hotter than they've ever been. Now, not like, I shouldn't say hotter than they've ever been, but some limited logos that were selling for 350,000. I heard of one that sold for 150 in the show. I think that's more than you could have gotten a year or two ago. And I'm kind of throwing numbers out there that might have been, 75,000 or something like that. So perhaps
I think key cards, key players are going to be sustained over time. I think whether it's our generation or whether it's younger people kind of looking to those legends, I still think they're going to be fine. It's going to have to be the card, and we've talked about that a lot. So I don't want to hit that over the head anymore. But yeah, I think the big players like Jordan, Kobe, Gretzky, they're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I think so. But then things move with the economy. Okay, Travis Mater says, it was a pleasure meeting you. You're a lot taller than I expected. I think I did this one already, but Travis is Mark Mater's son. Travis, was really good to meet you as well and to meet your dad in person. He's a great guy, and you seem to be too. Sam says, the best hockey pickups for me were at the National, and he goes to the Expo too, but I saw what he picked up, and there were some absolutely amazing cards. Sanderson to Orr, just woke up from passing out from when you said you would choose the National over the Expo. Well, listen, the Expo is like my home show. That's kind of like that. I consider that my home show, but the National is just, someone earlier, I'm sorry I didn't get to the comment, said, what is the National 4 times the size of the Expo? I would say at least. I don't know the numbers. I think maybe I do. I think the Expo is 130,000 square feet, and the National I heard was 600,000 square feet. So what's that? 4.5 times the size of the Toronto Expo, which is a big show too. Right. Rodman, what happened to the AC the first 3 days? It was overpowered, Rodman. It was overpowered, is my understanding. Perk says, I've learned to pick my spots. There are things I don't want to miss and deals I need to make, but I'll take an afternoon off or skip a trade night to make the experience better. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you can, if your hotel is close enough, and most of them are, mine wasn't. I was a $10 Uber away, but you can just go to your room and lie down for a couple hours, especially, so who was saying it earlier? Oh, it was Rodney Card Killer. I did an IG live with him before we started, Dennis, and he was saying that, he was carrying around a 40-pound backpack. I told people, and some didn't listen to me who heard me, backpack isn't the way to go. You want one of those like drag along wheelies that you pull with you, because never mind your feet, if you're now also putting stress on your shoulder, your upper back, you are not gonna, you're gonna not like yourself at the end of the day. And that can be 5 days in a row as well. So
wow.
Dwayne Tomka, nice meeting you as well. Dennis, did you happen to pick up a massive Griffey card? So Dennis wasn't there, but this is something else. I want you to speak to this, Dennis. First of all, did you happen to, as Dwayne asks, did you happen to pick up a massive Griffey card there? But can you also talk about like the FOMO aspect that you had and other people who didn't go to the National had? And in order to deal with your FOMO, were you looking to pick something up in the absence of being there? And do you think other people were doing the same?
I noticed that. I mean, from the groups that I follow on Instagram, the people I follow on Instagram, it seems like folks are trying to, basically fill the void of not being there, not being a part of what's going on by trying to find a great deal. And maybe there were other sellers that were out there going, hey, I'm going to take advantage of the timing of the National. This is a great time to sell your cards. I personally have a bunch of cards I want to send to Probstein to sell, and I'm waiting. I'm going to send them out, here in the next few days. I waited till after National because I figured a lot of folks are at National buying cards, not looking on eBay. So, but for those of us I are at home and aren't there, there was an opportunity to pick one up myself. This actually kind of came to me, and obviously I think we've already talked about it. It was it was a really big Griffey card that I've been wanting to, that have had my eye on. I think most Griffey collectors have their eyes on. and that presented itself randomly on, I think, Tuesday of last week. Had a great experience, great transaction, and but yeah, it was kind. I kind of felt like I was participating from afar. Everybody was like, again, I'll go back to the community aspect, meeting up with people, hanging out with some of these folks that I've built relationships with over the internet the past couple years, to me would be the most exciting part about going. But yes, going there and trying to buy a card, I feel like based on what I've seen, what I've heard, it would be overwhelming trying to, and you have to literally go there going, I'm looking for Griffey. And it's easier for me because I can just say I'm looking for Griffey. And I've got a pretty good understanding of his cards and what's important. So I wouldn't go down these rabbit holes. But it's not it. I would, if I see you buy that card, that opportunity comes, and now you've spent your money, and then you go there. I still feel like I would go there. I still would want to go there because I'd want to meet with you, Jeremy, hang out with you, hang out with Cage, hang out with Filmington, hang out with Brandon and Vadim and all different kinds of folks. A lot of you awesome people that I've met, and spend that time and have had sort of like crystallize those relationships would be more exciting to me. But I think that people did. I think people, I'm not there. I don't get to participate. Like that one gentleman said on the comments, I feel like I was the only one that wasn't there based on what I've been viewing. I can see why, finding a really cool card or taking advantage of someone listing a really great card can make you sort of feel like you're kind of part of it. And I posted my card going, hey, I'm not the national, but I did get this card. And you know what? It's pretty special. So,
and the card you got is a card that would be anybody's, like would have made anybody's trip to the national who likes to collect that kind of stuff. Like you picked up a card that would have been worth your trip, and you didn't have to go. Now, I'm not saying you wouldn't have wanted to go, but like, that I'm sure a lot of people did that. And then I wonder the fact that so many people were at the national. Were online sales hurt at all? Were the auctions that ended during the national, did they suffer because they ended during the national? And I'll tell you, I wasn't looking at all the auction platforms while I was at the national. I just didn't have the time or the energy to do it. I was carted out by the end of the day, and I didn't have the desire. So I don't know if I don't know if it's a good strategy to end an auction during the national.
No, I purposely avoided that, and because I'm gonna have to move some stuff to pay for this Griffey, and but I think and it's one of those, just for everybody knows, I got a 98 Skybox EX 2001 Essential Credentials Futures, Ken Griffey Jr. out of 91 and a PSA 9, pretty big card, one I never thought I'd ever get my hands on, and like again, it's a wonderful experience with the seller. He's just a great guy. Great experience. But I think and that was another thing I wanted to bring up. We talked about this pre-show. You said, okay, one of the comments you made, and I'll quote you. You can speak to this. There were quite a few 48 leaf Jackie Robinson cards there, and if you think about some of these vintage cards, you feel like, you tell me if I'm right here. They're not as rare as we think they are. Is it because the national's there and there's a lot of copies of all kinds of different cards, all being, all for sale at the same time? So it makes it seem like some of these cards, and I just saw Dwayne said, yeah, I saw that card was there I saw that card. It was your card you bought. It was there for like 2 days and it was gone. Okay, that card was even there, right? We talk about, okay, how rare are these cards really?
Yeah. I mean, you're on the, like I did make that comment to you earlier about the Jackie, and like I was looking for a 33 Gaudy Lou Gehrig, and I did not pick one up. I didn't find the right one, but there were several to choose from. I probably saw 30 of them. I probably saw 30 plus 48 leaf Jackie Robinsons in the room. I think it's a combination. I think really what it is this is the national, and a lot of them come out. There was one year at the national where I held 2 T206 Honus Wagners in my hand at the same time. 2 of all of them. I mean, so does that, should that make you think that it's not as rare? No, of course not. But it makes you realize that the national is truly a gathering of so many hobbyists. And I guess if you are somebody who is a dealer, that's where you want to go to sell your Jackie Robinson 48 leaf rookies, because you're going to have the most potential buyers outside of online in that room at that time. So I think they just come out. And then when I say, it makes you realize that vintage isn't rare. It never has been. There's tons of 52 mantles out there, but what is rare though, and this is what I couldn't buy. I didn't buy a 33 Lou Gehrig. What is rare is high eye appeal, low to mid grade. That is rare. You can buy average to ugly, ones, twos, threes, fours, and fives all day long at the National. There's tons of selection of that, but to find a really high quality, low to mid affordable card, and even those aren't affordable for a lot of people, it's tough. Here, Mike Petty says 30 in a room like that is rare. Yeah, it's a good point. Like maybe there could have been 200 of them, and I'm estimating 30. Like I might have seen more or less. I didn't keep a tab. I wasn't counting them, but Mike's right. Like that maybe that's the way to look at it. There were only 30 in that monstrous room. Maybe they are rarer than we think. So possible. But it does make it seem like they're not as rare as you do think, because they are all there. And there are some booths that just have multiples of all these cards as well. Like there's guys that'll have 5 48 leaf jackies. They'll have 4, and I'm picking numbers, 52 Topps mantles, 6 Bob Gibson rookies, 8 Nolan Ryans, 7 Ty Cobb T206s. Like it's just, it is a bit of a museum, and by that I just mean there's so much to look at. I don't mean that whole thing like, oh no, they're not for sale. The cards were priced more fairly than in the past couple of years, and if they weren't priced, again, I think people were willing to negotiate, at least some were. So that was pretty cool. Gregory says, I want to hit next year's National in Cleveland for 2 days. Should I hit the first 2 days or the last 2? My gut, Greg says the first 2, because the good stuff gets picked over. If you're looking for common commodity type cards, it doesn't matter. Go when it makes sense to you. But if you want to go to get the best selection, I would say go for the first 2 days.
Well, tell me this, Jeremy. What is it like? Is it that specific? Do you go there with that much of a like? I want to get X card. I mean, people see their wish lists.
No,
is that not what you do?
I don't. I go with my eyes wide open. Okay. I bought. So the reason why I only bought / cash traded for 4 cards the whole week was because, and I said this in my content leading up to the show, the thing I'm most excited about the National is learning what I'm going to buy. I didn't go like I'm going to buy this, and that, and I know what I'm going to come home with. So I picked up a couple of cards on day 2 that I had no idea I would get, and that took me out of the game pretty much for the rest of the show. I was bought out. I could not. I spent all my money, let's say, in one transaction on day 2, and so. Had I not been there on that day, I wouldn't have got those cards. And those cards that I got, and I'll reveal them another time, are absolute ghost grail cards that I would never have seen and haven't seen the light of day for over 15 years. So, yeah.
And you must feel that there must be a feeling, like, 'cause I know the feeling I have after getting that Griffey and a couple other cards I've got, going, wow, I'm holding something pretty special, something that matters to me, but it's like, it's very much coveted and in demand, and it's appreciated by the hobby, right? Potentially, the player collectors or whoever, just the card in general, right? That's got to feel pretty good coming back with that, right? I mean, that's that community, all that you want to talk about, but that's got to feel awesome coming back with that card, right? And that rare card, that's well,
because when you come out of that show with, say, 1 or 2 major pickups for your collection, whatever they may be, whatever the cost is, doesn't matter. Those then are the anchor memories, like, to a degree. Like, yes, I'm going to remember the dinners I had and the people I talked to, but I'm always going to associate the 2023 National with those 2 cards that I bought from that person. And, that's just, I think that's pretty cool overall. So I would recommend the first 2 days. That's just me. I'd be curious if anyone has reasons why the last 2 days and the middle 2 days. Cards AH says, I read a comment that auctions have picked up a ton in the last 2 days, with people and dealers having more cash and less stock. that's really cool. I mean, usually we've talked about the national hangover. This might be the national after party that Cards AH is noticing, and things always change. So maybe that's the fact, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
CC says, just my opinion, but seemed like fewer cards posted in collectors and PWCC auctions during the national. I think that's probably smart because I think fewer people are on the ball at that point in time. So that does make sense to me. Professor says a comment was made that historically the national was originally for vintage dealers. Yeah, originally it probably was, because originally is 1991, 92, when really everything was vintage at that point, except for, the early junk wax era stuff. So that's just kind of does make sense to me. Stuke says the Jackie Robinson booth at the back of the convention center was pretty rare to see. I didn't even see that, Stuke, but I'm sure it was pretty awesome. Travis Mater says the last 2 days of the show are the ones to go to if you're buying. If you're looking for bargains, that's probably better than the first 2 days. If you're looking for selection, I'd say the first 2 days. So it really depends on what you're looking for. And if it's only 2 days, maybe you go the first day and the last day, or the second day and the last day, or the Thursday and the Saturday might be the two best days to go, cover all bases. But there you go. All right. Okay, I'm going to go back to the notes here because I'm at the bottom of the I have a couple of things started here. Oh, show your slabs. This is earlier. Said, got to give Michael Rubin credit. He was all over the place and seemed very engaged. He was there longer than Ken Golden, who is the quote hobby representative. So I saw Michael Rubin from a distance. I didn't lay eyes on Ken Golden at all. I just didn't see him. I walked by and through the Golden booth a couple times, and I kind of looked around to see if he was there. I never saw him. I can't speak to that whatsoever, except that I didn't see him. But I did see Michael Rubin a couple times, other people from Fanatics, and they were all, like, when I saw them, they were all smiles, talking to people, taking time, taking pictures. I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, take that for what it is. And West Texas Wheel said 12-year-olds had better cards than me. Yeah, that's going to happen. That's just going to happen sometimes, for sure. Michael Ham says, I felt Friday was the busiest day for sure. Yeah, I think I agree with that, Michael. I feel like if I were to kind of audit my memory, I would think the same thing. Rodman says, I wonder what the ratio between vintage versus modern card tables was. I wonder too, Rodman, and I would like to see, I've seen people suggest having modern in one section and vintage in another, and kind of grouping similar vendors together. There is some vendors carry a lot of different things. There is overlap, but I think that would help kind of just corral the crowd it would be more efficient for everybody. So I think that's not a bad idea. As far as the ratio, I always come away thinking there's more vintage, and that might be because of these like high priority vendors that have been doing it for so long that just have the right to the booth. But the show has grown, and so what used to be the red carpet room is now the green carpet room. Almost all modern. The new room, almost all modern, but there was like Leighton Sheldon's table is in the new room. He has vintage. He had a beautiful 48 leaf Jackie and a PSA 6 holder that was wonderful. There was vintage in the new room, but a lot of modern in the new room as well. I don't know that. I don't even want to guess what that split was, Rodman. I just don't know. Joe Pro says, saw a number of Panini Black Box 101 openings, some with good results. Did you get a sense of how people were feeling about Panini? I didn't. I did not go to the Panini party. I did not have a ticket. I heard it was 15 grand in product to get in. I would never spend 15 grand on product. So I didn't have a ticket in, and I did not get that sense at all. Have you heard anything, Dennis, about what people are? No?
Not about Panini. I feel like Topps, Fanatics had a really good showing. This next comment, where you talk about Gary V being out there and Ruben being out there putting their time in. I saw Gary V everywhere. He was everywhere. Yeah. So
he was. I did a short interview with him. I walked by the V Friends booth. They had maybe the prettiest booth there. I mean, a big colorful V. It was really attractive from an aesthetics perspective, and was definitely going to attract a lot of kids who like the V Friends product. But he was walking the show floor. I talked to him a couple times. He's just always, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. he was buying some cards, and yeah, he seemed to have a good time for sure. Professor says Michael Rubin attended the Thursday night trade night and got a custom pair of sneakers. Great. Says, I don't know who won that Michael Jordan Mercedes for $23. Yeah, the way that Whatnot did their $23, I guess, kind of giveaway lottery sort of thing was, it was free to enter. So you didn't have to pay to enter. It wasn't a traditional lottery. It was free to enter. But if you won, you had to pay $23 for whatever you won. So if you won the Mercedes, you had to cut a check or pull $23 out of your pocket to buy Michael Jordan's old Mercedes. Seems like a pretty good deal to me, and free to enter. I watched some content yesterday where they totally misunderstood how that worked. It was AIH, another guy I didn't see. AIH Sports, Rahul, somebody who, I watch his videos every so often. I was hoping to meet him. Didn't even see him once. And I know he was there. Like, that would have been cool, But I heard in his video, he was talking about how Whatnot did he was referring to the state law, but he misunderstood what was happening. It wasn't an actual lottery where you had to buy. There was no buying spots. It was free to enter. Only the winner had to pay $23. Now, I don't know if that's legal or illegal, but the way I heard him explain it wasn't the way it actually was. Sean Red says, see much hockey. I saw lots of hockey. Not as much as I saw baseball, basketball, and football, but I saw a lot of hockey. But again, you had to be open to it. Like, it was there, but it wasn't.
Let me ask this question. What was the nicest hockey card you saw there? For all your hockey crowd here, what was the nicest hockey card you saw?
Oh man, there was. God,
you don't know what to do with that.
I mean, I don't remember. It's all a blur, dude. It's all a blur for me right now. I'll tell you, I only took one picture of one card in a showcase. And that was a Bronco Nagurski card that I thought was like just here. I found it right here. I took a picture of this card. It's an SGC3 Bronco Nagurski from 38. Yeah. 35 National Chickle. And this thing was like absolutely gorgeous. The price tag on it is $35,000. So about 30 grand more than I could have afforded to pay.
Same here. Right?
Absolutely gorgeous. And like, I just took a picture of it because I don't think I'd seen one so nice. And it's in a 3-holder. Probably has a crease or something, but I don't care. It was awesome. That's cool. Mookie says, Jeremy, was there anyone or anything that surprised you at this year's National? The thing that surprised me the most was it was just like a good vibes show. It was a good vibes show all around from at least in my experience. Like, I shook hands with some people that I've had. And again, listening to AIH's video today, he said he shook hands with people. I think he used the word beef. He said, I shook hands with Cade's lawyer. We've had beef, but you can shake hands. Like, I shook hands with some people that I've had beef with before. And that's the nice thing, is that when you meet somebody in person, anything, it's just something important to do, so that, we can disagree on the internet, but at the end of the day, we do have this cardboard thing in common. And I think that's important. And we can find some commonality to at least not want to punch each other in the face. So, Michael says AIH was there one day for a few hours. Well, that might explain why I didn't see him. Brendan Ryan says, do you think an app for dealers with all their inventory priced would make the prices more streamlined? Say dealer codes, t-shirts with dealers codes. I don't know. Would make the process more streamlined. Yeah, I think it might, but I don't know that people are going to be on an app. People, like, I wouldn't. Honestly, I referred to the GM10 app a couple times for the map. Otherwise, I'm looking in showcases. I want to be surprised personally, but that's just me. A lot of people are going with a list of cards they want, and I think that would be very beneficial for them, Brendan. But again, I'm trying to think outside my own shoes there. Jimmy says, would love to see video spotlighting what a dealer goes through for the full 5 days, tracking everything from setting up to earnings. Would you ever consider doing something like that? So I wasn't set up there, but would I consider it? If I had a camera crew, I would not be able to do that myself. Too much going on for me to actually video. I did very little to no content. I did that interview with Gary V, the interview with Yarmer Yager. I think that's all the content I did at the show. I don't have a bunch waiting to come. And people ask me, are you doing content? Are you doing content? No, like, oh, and I did an interview at the REA booth to showcase their auction. But I don't go to the shows to do content. There's enough guys that do that. I stick to what I do for content, and I think that's okay. It's so I can enjoy the show. Sorry, were you going to jump in, Dennis?
No, I don't have a whole lot to say on this episode. So no, I'm just listening and observing just like you.
Well, and feel free, please, to call out any comments that are coming. But we're staying on time with the comments here. Brendan Ryan heard complaints about prices on stuff. Yeah, you'll hear complaints about prices on stuff in every industry, in every era, not just at the national. That's just something to understand, everybody. People have been complaining about prices at card shows for decades. It's not new. And I would say that this year it was reversed. There were so much. I wouldn't say reversed. I would say the complaining was so much lower than in the past. People that I talked to and saw if all these vendors I talked to had their best show ever, people must have been buying. So yeah, you're always gonna have people complaining about prices, and there were some people who were overpriced. Tom Harrison says, I saw you ran into James Kehoe, the CGC Sports Illustrated guy. What a guy. I did see James. I've had him on my shows before. James is an awesome guy. One of my favorite guys in the hobby. Professor says you could enter the Whatnot Jordan Mercedes remotely. Yeah, you didn't have to be there to enter that. That's true. Fire says, Jeremy saw the National, wanted to say hi, but noticed you were busy and didn't want to interrupt. I wish you did. I mean, I appreciate that, Fire Sports Cards. I'm sorry that it didn't work out, and hopefully next time for sure. Zach says, it looked like to me that there was some strong innovation in card display and installation. The PMG Red wall that Show Your Slabs put together looked great. Yeah, I mean, the corporate vendors are getting their activations are becoming more and more sophisticated and interactive, crowd drawing, all that. So, the hobby is growing up and evolving in that way, I think, for sure. Dwayne says the CC2 trade night, so that's Card Collector 2 and Kentucky Roadshow, was very cool with the ability to QR code what you have, and then anyone could scan it and see what was there. So I didn't see that, but it sounds like a bit of work and line waiting, but I have no idea. Andrew, what are your guys' thoughts on Fanatics planning to have live shows starting in 2024? I mean, my thoughts, Andrew, are I want to see it. I don't know what they're planning to do. I don't know how they're planning to roll out Fanatics events, but listen, I'm sure they're going to do it well because I feel that they will. And I that's my thought. Until I see it, I can't assess it. So I have no thoughts other than I look forward to seeing it. How about you, Dennis?
I look forward to seeing anything that can be closer to where I am. I'm stuck up here in the Pacific Northwest, and everything is as far away as possible hobby wise. And most folks live towards the middle of the country and the East Coast, Northeast. I get it. A lot of dealers are there and all that. So that's why National's there. But to have some shows in Las Vegas, LA, even Seattle would be amazing. I don't know if they'll have a Seattle show, but even closer to me would be awesome. So I welcome it. For sure.
Yeah. Zach says, watch some YouTube lives. We were making jokes how miserable everyone was. Yeah, it was hot for the first 2 days. It was hot and it was crowded. I'm sure it was fun, but still fun to make fun of you all from my nice, cool air conditioning. Yeah, Zach, we being everyone at the show on those 2 days that were ridiculously hot in there. Yeah, you had every right, and I'm sure to make fun of us because we were like cattle in there and it was hot and crowded. And people were wearing towels on their bald head. I was, and I'm not, but people were wearing towels over their heads to absorb the sweat. It was hot and uncomfortable, but I'd still rather be there than not personally. And, it was still a lot of fun. Professor, internet wasn't that spotty. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't that spotty at the Chicago venue this week. Vintage would like to see categories clustered together. Me too. That's something I would like to see as well. Decoy Card says, would it be beneficial to group deal? Yeah, I think it would be beneficial for that. Decoy. Thank you, Tom Harrison. Michael Ham says next year the national page and or vendors event needs to be in one place with all timelines and lineups. It was difficult to know when and where to be for vendor events. Yeah, I think an events calendar on top of just the show hours, like when you get your badge, on the lanyard, it tells you the hours of the show. But there's so many extracurricular activities and even events going on during the show that if every vendor and corporate sponsor were to submit their calendar to some central organizer who could then disseminate it out there in some digestible format, I think that would be really helpful. And I think you're going to see that from kind of like some third-party apps. Maybe a GM10 or somebody else is gonna do that next year. Hopefully they do. Yeah. Definitely. Hockey Cards Plus, try living in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, Pacific Northwest. Probably the same. I think he's talking about the climate. Professor
he's actually talking about the upper look. The Upper Peninsula is actually pretty isolated. You got Old Time Hockey, though. If you guys don't follow him on Instagram, Old Time Hockey, forget Fitch, I think is his name. Guy's hilarious. He's really cool. Big hockey guy, but he makes all these different kinds of foods and lives out of his van. It's a great IG follow if you don't know who he is. But yeah, that's why I know about the Upper Peninsula, is because I guess he's from there. But no, they're all pretty isolated. Yeah.
Professor says, is having dealers vote for the next cities for the national fair? Should attendees have some input? Yeah, I saw somebody mention that. I don't remember who. Maybe Ryan Breakout said that. And I don't know. I don't know if what's fair. I just don't know what is fair. Who should have a vote? Because the vendors are most likely going to go. Attendees aren't as likely to go and travel. There's fewer attendees that are going to vote in Chicago. How would you vote? Who's going to vote? Are you going to vote? Are you going to go? I don't know. I don't know if that's really just as fair, because it could all, if you don't know who's voting, it could also be manipulated. So I don't know about that. But again, I'm not saying the current solution is the right one either. I was
hearing most of the vendors and dealers are located in the Midwest, Northeast, and East Coast, and they're not going to drive all the way to Las Vegas or LA. It's going to be harder for them to get there. That's why it's always, Midwest or East Coast, South.
Michael Ham says, I showered twice every day and 3 times the night it stormed. Yes, the weather turned. It was extremely comfortable in there on Saturday and Sunday, and I forget if Friday was a comfortable day or not. Maybe it was. Perk says, anytime you go somewhere for 5 days, it's not going to go perfectly. I have my gripes with PSA for jerking me around this show, but overall, what a great hobby experience. Can't really speak much of that, Perk. Don't know what happened with PSA, but I mean, I saw their booth. They were busy and they were smiling. Like all the PSA, they had a big staff there, and I walk by there several times, and they seemed all to be in a good mood and happy. And but hey, when you're serving that many people, you're gonna have some unhappy customers for sure. Mookie says the big rumor from this year's national was, again, another one. Like, I didn't really hear any rumors. I can't think of any rumor, Mookie, that I heard. Oh, well, the only rumor I heard that I just wasn't. I heard that Fanatics was going to buy the National. I heard someone say that, and then I spoke to the people that run the thing and asked them, and they said not going to happen. So I do not think now. Why would they tell me the truth? Why would they tell me what's going on behind closed doors? They probably wouldn't. So I can only go by what I was told, and I was told that is quite simply not happening. So also that the National isn't for sale. The National itself is not a for-profit event. The National is a nonprofit. It's the management of the National that charges a fee to do it. Now, I don't know how that all works, but, and definitely, do more research on that, because that's what I was told by people in the know, but I don't know how that works myself. Joe Pro, shout out to Michael Tam for his tour of the floor video. Really helped me appreciate the cards himself as if I was actually there. That's an awesome piece of content. I thought about doing that, like just filming my walk through the floor, but I got stopped so many times that I just couldn't have done it and not doing it. I couldn't have done it properly. JG says the National is making bank. I don't know. I mean, the National is, well, anyway, I just can't speak to it. Mookie, you filled in the blank. I'll try to stop stumping you. Thanks, Mookie. I appreciate it. I got you one time there. Perk says PSA was a personal experience. They misplaced my order and kept asking me to come back. Just prevent. Yeah, that's going to happen. I feel bad for you, Perk. You know, that you don't want that to happen, but it's going to happen once in a while. And I at the end of the day, I certainly hope you got your stuff back. I hope you did. Did you? And I like to think that you would have. That's not fun, but it's going to happen. And hopefully it didn't ruin your time too badly. That's for sure. One thing I wanted to mention was, going into the show, I talked about, how one of the things that one of my advice to show goers is, if you're gonna, don't wait to buy the card you want. Like, if you see it, buy it, because it might not be there when you get back. And I think that held up this time. I know it worked. It worked for me, and I think it worked for some other people who heard about a card and it wasn't there when they wanted to buy it. I think that advice held up for this show. The other thing that I hear people saying is, and someone else did a post on Instagram, I forget who it was, but they said, whoever said that if it exists, you'll find it at the National. And then they want to say that's the most asinine comment ever. And I can say it certainly is the most asinine comment ever. There are lots of things you are not going to find. Don't think you'll find anything you want at the National. You won't. There are tons of cards that are not there. And it's just the way it is. But you will find more there than you will find at any other physical gathering on the planet. So take that for what it's worth right there. A question for you, Dennis, from Mookie. Who made the best national content? Who were you watching?
I actually listened to Neo, Northeast Ohio Sports. He walked through his day and recapped it every day. And, obviously he's not in front of a camera and he's got it pointing at he walked through some cards, and I liked his breakdown of the whole. My buddy Filmington kind of turned me on to him. I'm late to the party with Neo. But I appreciated he was very thorough. But yeah, that was probably my favorite.
And I know Joe Perot in the chat, he watched a bunch of content too. So he might have a good answer for that as well. Professor, based on Dennis's comment about future cities for the National, looks like Atlanta may not have a chance. I don't think Dennis has any intelligence on that. Any intel, like not Dennis doesn't know, but I think Atlanta is one of those cities it's Atlanta, it's Atlantic City, and it's Chicago for 2025, right? So we'll see which city win. I think Chicago is going to win that vote personally, and we're going to have 3 years in a row in Chicago. I'm perfectly fine with that myself. Chicago is easy to get to from most places. It's not my favorite building, but the overall area that the show is in is my favorite, because you've just got so many hotels and restaurants right around it that it makes it a really nice place to be. So Cousins Collectibles in the house. It was great to see these guys in person, and they were they're part of the Wolfpack running that, what is now, I think, is going to be an annual event. Says it wasn't us. We were too wrapped up in the National to make content. Yeah, me too, fellas. Me too. Mookie says Cousin Oz was too busy moonwalking. I saw that. I saw him dancing. I wasn't there for that. I left too soon for that, but I saw that. And those guys are the best. Check out Cousins Collectibles podcast, everybody, for sure, if you are not already. Andrew says, what were the biggest differences between this year's National and 2022? From my perspective, it was the fair prices. It was people just willing to sell at more reasonable valuations. I don't want to say comps, because I personally don't hold myself accountable. That's just one time. But I think, vendors were more willing to do cash trades. From people I spoke to, they were willing to just sell lower than they were in 2022. I think that was the biggest difference that I personally noticed, and that what I heard from talking to other people. Joe Perot says, I really appreciate the card ladder drops. Stiff arm wax always brings high production quality, and it features some great personalities and cards in short drops. Just collectors talking about their cards. Yeah, so I was in one of those videos, and I didn't know what it was going to be. And then I started seeing them dropping them, and these short 5-minute videos. So that was definitely something to check out. The card ladder content drops were great.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. That's something I actually enjoyed too. It was very high production quality. Enjoyed the content. Good point.
Cousins Collectibles says he agrees. Pricing was a lot more flexible and reasonable compared to 2022. So there's another person putting their vote that way as well. I mean, we had record-breaking square footage. We had record-breaking attendance. I mean, there wasn't a lot of drama. There wasn't a lot of newsworthy events. I don't know of any company that made a big, what companies made a big splash there from an announcement. ComC dropped their app like a couple days before, and they also dropped the CAPTCHA when you log into their site. So that was kind of good, I guess. I was logging in less because of that, so they dropped that. But I didn't really hear any major announcements. I remember the 2021 National when Ken Golden announced there was going to be a Netflix series. That was big news back then. And then right after, you had the Fanatics announcement of the licenses. So, but I didn't hear of any drama. Oh, the biggest drama I heard was that one guy who someone got a picture of selling fake PSA 10 Jordans for $3,000. That was I didn't hear of anyone getting cards stolen. Not saying it didn't happen. I'm sure it did, but I didn't hear. Usually I've seen at least one kind of stampede of people chasing some guy. Like all of a sudden there'll be a big kerfuffle and you'll see people running. I didn't see any of that this year. I didn't personally hear any accounts of anybody having cards stolen. So that's good. No real drama. I saw reverse drama. I saw a lot of handshakes between people who you think are adversaries in the content world, but I saw a lot of those. I saw a lot of handshakes at that point in time. So, that's interesting, I guess, the lack of that. I'll go through some more comments, guys. We'll wrap up in about 10 minutes here. We're at the hour 32 mark. So, Zach Searcy, I saw your IG Live with Card Killer. Were card artists a hit at the National? I can't really speak to that, Zach. I saw a few walking around, but I didn't necessarily see a bunch of card artist tables. I might have missed that section if there was one. So I'm sorry, but I can't really answer that. Next question from Zach. Never been to a National, but it seems like some want the National in other parts of the country, but the show seems content to be in that part. Yeah, I mean, of course, not everyone's going to agree on this. My personal thoughts are Chicago every year. Then people say, well, if it's truly the National, make it national. I don't subscribe to that. That's just a brand. It's just a name of the show. Change the name then and call it the Chicago. I don't care. I'd be happy with it there because it's just the most convenient, I think, to the most people. Atlantic City's I'm not going to go if it's in Atlantic City, not because I don't want to be there, but because it's just too much of a hassle. The travel is too much of a hassle. You can't fly into the city where the show is. That it's great for everyone that can drive in the Northeast, but if you have to fly, not quite as convenient. Another content suggestion from the professor. Mojo Sports YouTube did a great walkthrough of the National. Also, Mike Moynihan, baseball collector, who is an alumnus of Sports Cards Live, number 103. Thank you, Professor. Yeah, Mike always does a great job recapping his National and his card show experiences. Frankie says prices were definitely better. I ended up with way more cards than intended, right? Ace Card Grading says, love all the trade nights going on. It was nonstop. I heard about that too. Only attended one, but I mean, I saw some in hotels. Old School says Beckett was pretty quiet. I heard they were busy at their booth. They had Dr. Beckett there for a meet and greet. I saw Card Porn kind of promote that on Instagram. So, but I didn't the Beckett booth was way at the back. They had a way bigger area, but they were way at the back. Maybe not the best location for Beckett this year. Vintage card collectors. I spoke with a few dealers who said theft was bad. Groups of 3 to 4 people working in tandem. Yeah, I didn't hear any of that, Vintage. So I'm sorry to hear that. But again, you have to expect it. But that sucks. That definitely sucks. Michael Ham says card artists were around, but were hard to find. Fair enough. And Perk says one nice surprise was my experience with Arena Club. Didn't expect to visit them, but super nice staff, and they were thankful that I graded a nice card with them. And they had Derek Jeter at their booth, which was definitely attention grabbing for sure. So
that was cool.
All right, that's the end of the comments. So that's great. We'll wrap up. Dennis, anything else you wanted to mention, talk about, comments, observations?
No, it seemed like my takeaways are that the National was a positive all around experience. Prices have come back to more of a normalized level. Dealers are being more, they're willing to work with buyers. It was hot. The hobby's alive and well. I feel really confident in the space. I feel great to be a collector, and the hobby community seems wonderful. I mean, yeah, you say hobby beefs don't exist in person; they only exist on the internet. I mean, that sounds like it's very true. Once you all get together and you see each other in person, it's a great way to mend the fences and just remember we're all about collecting together and put all those differences aside. And it seems like people, the community just keeps growing closer and closer. No, I'm very, very, very excited to attend the National next year.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you there. Professor says, were you expecting Beckett to make a follow-up to their failed Mint Collective grading rollout? I wasn't. I think the best thing Beckett can do right now, and this is just my thought, I think the best thing they can do right now is focus on their core competency, which is grading, and focus on their subgrades and their grading scale as it stands, and focus on their customers and kind of stay a little quiet. That might be the right thing. Kind of get a few,
get your house in order.
Yeah, exactly. Get the house in order. Get a year of operating under their belts, and I think I hopefully they learn from a couple of failed rollouts how to roll out a big change and just plan it better next time. Consult with more people, that sort of thing. Vintage Card Collections, great cards, great people, great memories. Great comment, Vintage. Great comment. Rick Hawkins, thank you so much. Andrew says, what is the Cleveland National like? Is it similar to Chicago? Not really. It's one rectangle. At least it was when I was there. It is one rectangle, whereas the Chicago National is several. Well, it's like 1, 2, 3. It's like 5 or 6 areas, and they're not like they're just. It's hard to navigate. It's not like you can walk up and down the aisles and see the whole show. At the Toronto Expo, you can literally walk up an aisle, down, up, down, and make sure you've seen everything. In Chicago, it's staggered. It feels unorganized the way the tables are laid out. And so you don't know where you've been. Like it's just really hard to cover the whole show floor in any logical pattern. The Cleveland National, it's a higher ceilings, way brighter, natural light shining through the roof.
Right.
I love that. I love that venue. Love the venue, but it's not walking distance to restaurants or hotels. So it's a lot of car rentals, Ubers, taxis, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting how the trade nights kind of work themselves out. Where will they be? Because you're not walking out from outside the convention center across the street or through the tunnels to the trade nights. You literally have to have transportation. So that's going to be interesting to see. And who knows? Maybe that'll eventually take Cleveland out of the circuit. I don't know. Maybe. Mookie says, I said earlier, the Chicago National layout looked like a level from the old Zelda game on Nintendo. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Exactly. It's like Zelda, Metroid, all those old games that I was playing. Really hard to navigate. Extremely hard. Decoy says maybe the organizers should just take over an abandoned mall, plenty of space and empty stores to set up trade nights and dealer booths. Michael Ham says this was a giant horseshoe. Took me a day and a half to figure it out. Hanging signage was pretty much non-existent. Yeah, it was hard to find. You couldn't really even look up and see where what aisle you were in. And booth numbers were extremely hard to find. Jimmy says if Fanatics wants to 10x the hobby, they should give people free boxes at sporting events. Yeah, let them know, Jimmy. That's definitely one idea to make the hobby. I don't disagree. I mean, give them packs, give them something, and maybe they will. You got to think that they're going to be giving out a lot of product for free to do that. That might be the best idea, Jimmy, and that might be the one that they use the most. Who knows? We'll see. All right.
You doing all right?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing it. The hobby's bigger than you think. I think that's
water. You need a drink of water, my friend. some tea.
There's lots of people that don't go to the national. I don't know what percentage of people in the hobby do go, but I think it's small. I think it's like maximum 5%. It's probably even less that actually make it there. We had over 100,000 people, I think, by Saturday. It broke the record like by Saturday, I heard. So
that's a great sign. That's a great sign, man. Those are all wonderful things to think. The fact that most of us aren't there and you have that many people there, that much engagement. That's a really, really good sign. Hobby's in great shape. What a great community.
So many kids. It was so busy. So many people having fun, like smiling faces everywhere. It was a good vibes show. Good. Overall. Of course, there were negative experiences. People had bad experiences and for specific reasons here and there, but overall, good vibes. I didn't talk to anybody that didn't have a great time. No, even despite the heat in the room on those 2 days, I didn't talk to anybody who at the end of the show was still complaining. Like,
that's good news.
I walked a lot. I covered that show floor, and some people I saw 3 or 4 times and several I saw 0 times. And I hope that's not the case next year. And I think it'll be a bit more manageable, but we'll see. All right, guys.
Very much appreciate the breakdown from you and from all those in the comments. Thank you for all of your input and sharing your experiences. It's great for folks like me to learn what to look forward to next year. What's awaiting us if we're going to attend our first or maybe second to head back to the national. It was a very value-filled episode. A lot of great stuff.
Well, hopefully, I know we all don't agree on everything, and that's okay. But we all have different experiences in the hobby, and we all have different experiences at the card shows. So, last comment, Travis says, "Would you ever set up?" I set up the national between like 2011 and 2016 or 17. So yes, I've set up several times, and I would. It's just hard for me to bring, because I'm in Canada, to bring my inventory over the border. It's just tough. So I just prefer to not. Really. Thank you, Michael Ham. Thank you for your engagement. Thanks, everybody in the chat, for your engagement tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed this and got a little glimpse. If you weren't at the national, if you were, you got to hear another perspective. And from everybody in the chat, thank you for sharing your experiences and observations. Dennis, thank you for co-piloting with me tonight. Appreciate you as always. Thank you, Dwayne Tomka. It was good to meet you at the show. Everybody else. And with that, thank you, Mookie. Thank you. Wish I got to meet Mookie at the show. I mean, so many people I just didn't get to see for whatever reason. So next year. All right, everybody. With that, this episode of Taking Stock is now over.